readers of the Flying Pages magazines and viewers of the eFlight Garden Talk YouTube channel, and all other interested people who are interested in electric mobility in the air. We started the Garden Talks in the year of Corona, where most of the shows are cancelled, and you don't have the possibility to meet the makers of the scene firsthand. This time in the eFlight Garden Talk number 5, we have the honor to have the people of D3, a company from Munich, which has the goal to make urban air traffic management for urban air taxis possible, because, as you will hear in the following minutes, there is a lot of challenges for this new air mobility in the air. So welcome D3 here at the eFlight Garden Talk. I have the honor to have here D3, a startup company from Germany, which is exactly working in this field and which will give you the advantage to understand what is the problem in urban air traffic management. Because when you hear about urban air taxis, you think, yeah, okay, there are just one point more of the mobility which will be added on, but there is much more behind it. Welcome with us, Corvin Huber, CEO and founder of D3, Ralf Schopenhauer, head of air traffic control of D3, and Otto Bommer, head of avionics. Corvin, can you explain us why D3 must be there to make urban air traffic management and urban air taxis possible?
Of course, Ralf, thank you very much for having all of us. Let me point out, please, that Ralf and Otto are co-founders too. So I'm not the only one who founded this company. Thanks for having us again. We're excited to share our insights with you. Would it be okay to pull up a slide?
No, you're welcome to share your vision.
All right, Willy will share some slides with you and the viewers. Please bear with me for a second. Willy, we founded D3 Technologies to actually deliver the third dimension. What do we mean by this? The electric flight has progressed to a point where a new mode of transportation is actually feasible. You know as much about that as we do. We're excited to see drones appearing and drone developments progressing to a point where you would actually wish that they were flying already today. Drone flight offers an interesting perspective. You can position drones in the sky much more exactly than you can traditional aerodynamic aircraft. And this allows us to dream of flying air vehicles in closer proximity to each other than was possible until a short while ago. In order to do this, we have to address a number of challenges that we'd like to talk about. So first of all, we all agree that air taxis are coming. We understand that air taxis are being used already today for critical purposes. A number of big players are ramping up to preparing test flights worldwide. We have a large number of eVTOL development projects worldwide. At last count, I believe it's more than 180. A lot of money is being poured into vehicles, into ground infrastructure, into service operations, etc., etc. But we discovered that the management of vehicles is a bit of a white spot on the map. What do we need to see in order of air traffic, in order to manage air traffic properly, urban air traffic properly? This development as a whole needs to benefit society. It has to prevent individual companies from taking over a city's airspace. And last but not least, we need to manage a very large number of vehicles safely and responsible in congested urban airspace. Traditional air traffic control was never intended to manage a large number of aircraft. in close proximity, and an automated approach is required. And that is what D3 is about. Ralph, you want to talk about our approach to safe and automated air traffic control?
Yes, Corvin just mentioned the current air traffic control infrastructure in any country is not built for small aircraft moving at low altitudes and very close proximity. Furthermore, when we talk to regulators in the US and in Europe, so the FAA on one side, EASA and Eurocontrol with the Single European Sky Initiative on the other side, there seems to be a general expectation that in the future urban air traffic will need to be controlled by regional and or local service providers rather than by the currently existing national air navigation service providers. Furthermore, if you look at the traffic forecast for urban air mobility, it will become clear very soon that this traffic volume cannot be managed in the way civil aviation is currently being managed from one controller to one pilot. There will need to be a highly automated system. We have developed a solution that provides automatically planned and previously deconflicted routes to air vehicles. These deconflicted routes will be continuously updated by our air traffic management system and provided to the participating air vehicles. A very important aspect is that if you look at current developments for managing drone traffic, so small work drones, these systems are developed to do exactly that, to manage small drones in low density airspace and not passenger carrying drones. The safety level that you need to demonstrate in order to get your air traffic management system certified for passenger carrying traffic are very different from the approaches taken currently by the drone fleet management system providers. So we believe that there is no incremental path from managing small work drones to automatically managing passenger carrying urban air traffic in high density and high complexity airspace. I think I can now hand over to Otto, who will explain in more detail our roadmap and the integration that we plan between the ground-based air traffic management system and the airborne component that we're developing.
Yes, thanks, Ralph. I can do that. So what we are currently doing is moving from prototype and paper stage to first prototype stage. And we intend to develop a first prototype of a ground station communicating with an airborne unit, which we call Blue Box. And the intent of that unit is to demonstrate in flight test campaigns or in lab campaigns the capability to share data between a ground station and an airborne unit with higher fidelity than was possible in the past, so that multiple air vehicles can share the same air traffic situation and have a shared situational awareness on the ground and in the air, so that, as earlier described by Corvin, that flight in closer proximity becomes possible. So we are working on that at the moment. Target is to have first prototype available for lab and flight test in second quarter of next year.
Thank you very much, Otto. We are targeting flight test areas with our communication system, and we hope to be operative in more than one flight test area by the end of 2021, which means we would be offering seamless air-to-ground communication to flight test to companies who want to flight test their vehicles. This would be managed, like Otto explained, through a proprietary system that we will be installing at these flight test areas. And it is basically comprised of a communication backbone, a ground station, and a piece of vehicle equipment, avionics, that receive data from the ground and disseminate it to the vehicle, or also collect vehicle data and send it back to the ground. We expect first experimental use case, or excuse me, first what we call early use cases available to the public by the end of 2023, early 2024. And we are quite convinced that we will have a very viable offering for those early use cases by that time. So D3 actually wants to make sure that we can share the sky with everyone who wants to use it. And we want to make sure that cities remain livable and make sure that they can manage their own future and destination without having to hand it over to fleet operators. So with that, Willy, back to you, and we'd be very happy to answer questions as you indicated earlier.
Right, perfect. Yes, my first question would be to Otto, because we talked about, or you talked about, that there will be a proprietary avionics, piece of avionics. Have you already discussed with which software or with manufacturers, which will be kind of the protocol, or is there any idea for the protocol which will be accepted by different manufacturers? Because this will be the basics, that there is a standard protocol on which several manufacturers can speak.
Right, yeah. So we are looking at 4G, 5G technology at the moment for the communication link between airborne and ground. So this allows us to have a high data rate, which is the basis to have a good shared situational awareness on the ground and in the air. Naturally, the safety requirements which are applicable make it necessary that this will not be 100% off the shelf, but it will be based on off-the-shelf components from the 4G, 5G market, but with modifications to ensure that we can meet the necessary safety requirements for the functions.
Will the question to whoever can answer it best, will there be still it will obligatory to have also a transponder on board? Because right now the system is mainly based on having every aircraft a transponder system which communicates with the existing air traffic management. Or will it be that the vehicles will communicate with your system and your system will communicate with the upper air traffic management, which still will exist, as I understand?
Right, Corvin, do you want to answer?
Well, I'll pass this on to Ralf, who is the air traffic control specialist, in a moment, but let me quickly point out really the question is, well, we get asked this question quite frequently, and we have to point out that a transponder not necessarily has to be the type of transponder that we know today. So a lot of people talk about ADS-B, and when they talk about ADS-B, they are talking about specific frequencies and specific protocols. We find the concept of ADS-B quite fascinating, because ADS-B basically means that the vehicle is permitted to transmit its own position back to air traffic control. And this is quite a fascinating concept, which will certainly play a major role in our system too. But Ralph, what is your, how do we see the ADS-B topic with regards to our technology?
I don't see ADS-B as a future mandatory equipment on board eVTOLs in an urban air mobility environment. Current ADS-B technology has a number of drawbacks that would prevent us from using that in the scenario that we're envisaging. But I assume that an eVTOL owner or operator will want to operate his or her air vehicles under different types of flight rules in different types of airspaces. And so in order to operate an eVTOL outside an urban environment under simple visual flight rules, or in a different type of airspace under instrumental flight rules, you're going to need a mode Charlie or a modest transponder. So we're agnostic when it comes to that technology. We have our own development approach for D3 equipped air vehicles, but I definitely see a variety of types of equipment that we're going to have in the future in an urban air mobility environment.
Okay, one question would be, what would happen if you have your airspace, which is defined by the D3 rule, but what would happen, because there will be probably also other aircraft than urban air mobility air taxis flying in there? What's about a rescue helicopter? Will he has to have a D3 box on board, or how would this be managed?
At this time, we are assuming that third-party traffic, or what is sometimes called non-cooperating traffic, would be recognized by the system and communicated to the participating air vehicles, so that there would not necessarily have to be communication between, let's say, a medevac helicopter and the drones flying, but that this will happen via the ground system. Eventually, as traffic grows tighter and the integration increases, it is quite conceivable that the helicopter would have on board a piece of equipment that would fully integrate it into the urban traffic system. So I see both options as being possible. We have to recognize really at this point in time that the regulatory authorities have not made up their mind yet what the mode of operation will exactly be. There's still a lot of discussion going on what airspaces will be used, where exactly which type of drone can fly. We can see that the discussion is evolving from drones being able to fly everywhere in a given city, and we're now seeing that there's a lot of thinking directed towards having corridors. Conceivably, if there were drone corridors, rescue helicopters could navigate around those corridors. So nobody knows exactly what the future will look like in this respect, but our system will be able to accommodate both the rescue vehicle that is not equipped to work as a fully integrated part, and obviously even more attractive would be if this type of vehicle would be fully integrated by carrying on board the appropriate avionics.
Okay, understood. I perhaps, Xin, you have a question, because Ralph mentioned before that there is a strict, or there is a kind of big difference between unmanned small drones, which are in planning and in operation already right now, and the coming urban air traffic management. In China, there is an approach which is happening already right now with the drones. Perhaps you have some question how this could work together with the D3 system.
Perhaps you can help me understand how the UTM could integrate into different air traffic control systems in different countries. For example, would there be like a universal UTM standard, or would that be different from country to country?
Yeah, we definitely intend to have our air traffic management system for urban air mobility as an open platform. We intend to share all our flight plan data with adjacent service providers, including the national air traffic control authorities. Now, data exchange protocols are very different from country to country and from continent to continent. And even in the European Union, I mean, air traffic control still relies on oldie messages for flight data exchange. It's a protocol from the 1980s that we frankly don't intend to implement. But there is already an architecture blueprint in the US, for instance, for a flight data interchange management system, something that will be provided by the FAA to drone operators. And that type of flight data interchange platform will most certainly be implemented in Europe, in China, and in other geographies as well. So our intention is to connect to this type of platform where available, and to use it to interchange flight data, tracking data with other service providers and with the national air traffic control authorities.
Understood. And may I ask another question? That we understand that from airframe certification, there is their own certification requirement, right? Like Part 23, Part 27, etc. And for operation, there's also their operation protocols. So could you enlighten us? What is there like a special certification or protocol for air traffic control system, or would you see there would be any special barrier to overcome in terms of the certification, a component certification or protocols?
There seem to be several questions in one there.
Yeah, right.
So your question also seems to refer to the current development of drone management systems. Is that correct?
Yeah, because the reason of my question is, for example, for eVTOL, now there's no established airworthiness certification requirement, so that is a big barrier. So I'm just wondering, is there such barrier in terms of certification and the protocol or technical standards in air traffic control system and the data exchange?
Oh, well, so in order to get your system certified, so that you can use it to control passenger carrying traffic, there are existing technical standards that are recognized as means of compliance to get your system certified. And we intend to comply with all of these existing standards. It would be DoD standards in the US that have their equivalent in Europe with EUROCA standards, for instance. Or a simple example would be, for instance, the safety requirements for air traffic management systems were developed originally by Eurocontrol, but are now still used and applicable in the European Union. And we certainly intend to comply in our development to comply with these safety standards and safety requirements.
Ralph, would it be fair to say that the safety requirements as they are formulated for standard air traffic control do not in themselves pose a major problem for us? Or basically, we think that urban air traffic could be possible based on the same set of fundamental rules as air traffic control is based on. So we are not waiting for a new set of rules in order to make this possible. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. We will adhere to the existing safety requirements and in high safety standards that exist for civil air traffic control today. So these are the highest possible standards in existence. And since we want to make our platform as safe as possible, we are going to use these established and well-known standards.
Understood. Thank you.
I have a question which is to the near future, which you mentioned, Corvin. You said you intend to have a test area starting probably in 2021, which is next year, or some test areas, which is a brighter goal. Can you disclose where you're planning these test areas will be? Perhaps first in general, is it more Europe, US, or perhaps China? Or, and then more closely, if it's in Germany, do you already have negotiations going on where it could be?
We are looking at a number of opportunities there. Really, you know that a number of states in the United States have offered a fairly large flight test areas. But we are also very happy to see that there are a significant number of flight test areas designated here in Europe. You know about several opportunities in Scandinavia, but also here specifically in the Munich area, there are two operations areas in which eVTOLs are already being tested. And we are currently speaking to all of the above possibilities, but at this point in time, we cannot disclose what our first installation will be, but we hope to be able to do that quite shortly.
Okay. It was mentioned before that you said that it will be the D5, 4 or D5 telephone network. Will it directly go to a telephone network in the fiber group, or do you think it's necessary to start with D4? To whom it may concern?
Well, at this point in time, we will be installing proprietary hardware to kind of create a cell system that covers the flight test areas. This will be based on 4G hardware, but might very well incorporate 5G operations philosophy. So we are looking at a hybrid right now between 5G and 4G.
Okay. Okay. Xin, you have any further question at this point?
No.
And
Thank you.
then I have one which is also concerning China, because we heard in several of the garden talks already that there is that in China there is going on some unmanned drone testing with large drones, and there are permissions giving out even for operation without having a type certificate of the aircraft. Are you at D3 aware of this, and are you also looking forward to try out your system with this kind of existing drone operations, or would you say no, we are looking basically only on manned airspace and we are not interested in working with unmanned systems?
So we're interested in working with anyone who wants to work with us, understanding that we are looking at system safety standards that are applicable to manned transportation. So especially in the heavy drone area, where the potential damage a drone can create is similar to what a manned drone would do, I think we would have a very good basis for discussion. So we are not, we are very much willing and happy to talk to anyone who accepts that in the long run, the safety standard will be dictated by human carrying standards. And from our discussion with drone manufacturers, especially the heavy drone manufacturers, agree with this assumption. So we are not limited to man-carrying exercises.
Mm-hmm. And where, this is now a kind of guess, where do you think the first systems worldwide, may it be your system, may it be another system, will be installed for heavy drone or manned drone operation? Will it be European continent, Asian continent, or United States? Guess.
Really, if I knew the answer, I would be much smarter than I am, and then I could concentrate my efforts on that area too. I think that we will see various degrees of implementation happening at many places in the world almost at the same time. You have heard that Paris is looking at a 2024 timeframe. Vancouver is sometimes talking about 23 or 24. There are a number of Asian cities who want to see some kinds of operations even earlier than that. We will be seeing various degrees of implementation in the next years. They will be popping up. We'll be hearing about them. What constitutes a really functioning, integrated human carrying system, and how commercial it is or how experimental it is, we will have to see how this evolves. I see that all three major areas, the Asian area, China, we see Europe, we see the US making big efforts to be operative as early as possible. I can't give you a real guess. Being from Europe, I would hope that something happens here in Europe very early, but I see big chances that we'll be seeing early installations anywhere in the world.
A follow-on question on this one is, with which government organization at the moment are you working, and which are the government organizations which you think are necessary to get involved to get things moving? Will this be more the governments itself? Will it be Europe, national governments here in Europe? Will this be more European control and the European Commission? Or where do you see the ball is laying at this point for getting it rolling as fast as possible?
Well, we are part of the working groups both in North America and in Europe that are working on setting standards and defining operation concepts. And we see that a lot of work is being done there, and I think it is adequate. I think that the real gatekeeper at this point is the willingness of individual regions or cities to actually open up for this purpose. We see that some cities are forging ahead on this area, for instance, like Paris for the 2024 Olympics. We also are very interested in the program that North Rhine-Westphalia is publishing right now, kind of thinking of connecting the Cologne, Bonn, and Düsseldorf airports. This kind of initiative is extremely important to get things happening. We see similar initiatives in Norway and Sweden. We see initiatives on the west coast of Canada. I think that city support is the most important ingredient right now to get urban air mobility off the ground. We all know that actual certification will be provided by the nation states or supranation agencies like the EASA, but if the cities don't want this mode of transportation, it will not happen. So yes, I think that the cities or regional conglomerates are the key gatekeepers right now.
So having this said, and then having knowing that in the cities normally, at least in the Western world, there are elected politicians making the decision. So public acceptance would be a very important factor also for your work and for the success of your company. Is this correct?
We see that as key, and we believe that we have value to offer for the entire industry here, because we think that as an independent service supplier, we have the opportunity of convincing cities that they can maintain control of their own destiny. Basically, if a city can determine where starting and landing pads will be located, if the city can determine where fly and no-fly zones are, if cities can determine curfew times, no flying between 11 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning, if cities get the feeling that they can actually manage their own air traffic, they will be it will be easier to convince them to adopt this mode of transportation. And we believe that as an independent service supplier, we can convince them that they will be able to manage their own skies and make sure that social benefit will be served.
Okay. I have a question on Ralph, or to Ralph on one subject, again, on the players. You worked for Deutsche Flugsicherung, and are you aware that at this point, Deutsche Flugsicherung or Eurocontrol, or like Corvin said, perhaps even some cities are looking into the technology, or is it more that Deutsche Flugsicherung and Eurocontrol are just waiting that somebody comes up to them and says, okay, we want to have a system here. Can you supply such a system?
Well, I am aware that Deutsche Flugsicherung is partnering with young companies who provide services such as drone maps, mm-hmm. or drone operations management, and that's very important because those small work drones become more and more in Germany. So it's important for the air traffic controllers to have visibility of drone operations that occur close to controlled airspace. There's also a development program ongoing at Deutsche Flugsicherung to implement a drone intrusion detection system at all major German airports. To the best of my knowledge, neither Deutsche Flugsicherung nor any other navigation services provider in Europe is currently already looking at an urban air mobility environment with passenger carrying traffic at high densities, because that scenario is too far away for most people in Europe still.
Okay. I have another question, which is another factor which in the last discussion was mentioned, which is very important, like the traffic management system. It's an infrastructure factor. And this both probably have to work hand in hand, because also the traffic management system does need infrastructure to be installed. Who do you think will be the players there? Because there has been told that airlines, for example, has been looking into this, like Lufthansa. There has been Deutsche Bahn and other railway systems like Swiss Railway looking into this. Other logistic companies has been looking into this, or real estate developers. Whom do you see as your closest partner working on getting an infrastructure established from those players?
By infrastructure, you mean the ground infrastructure?
I mean, yes, I mean the ground infrastructure has to be installed, and several companies are working on this ground infrastructure, like Deutsche Bahn, or thinking on models how it could be, or real estate developers, mainly in the United States. But if you want to have your system installed, and them, if they want to have their investment getting used, they must also think of having an air traffic system, making the traffic, otherwise their investment will not be valid. They cannot make any profit out of this. So are there talks going on, and which do you think are the most natural partners for such a development?
Well, for us, main partners that we're currently talking to are the airframe manufacturers, because we would like, of course, very much to do already our first flight trials with the early eVTOL models that are currently under development and under testing.
Okay.
So secondly, we are partnering with the communication service providers for reliable 4G communications, as Otto mentioned a little earlier.
Okay.
So that's the second type of very important technology partnership for us. When it comes to the people who own and operate the ground infrastructure, of course, we're going to have an interface with them And of course, whether a city needs a D3 type open air traffic management platform or not will depend on the density and the complexity of the traffic. If you have very few eVTOLs flying, they can fly under VFR as they do today, you know. Or if they're so equipped, they can fly under IFR in controlled airspace as well. But we're looking at new types of traffic, new types. So types of traffic we don't currently have, you know, and we're looking at a much higher traffic density than we currently see over the big metropolises.
Okay.
We do see a third infrastructure supplier, and that is the data supply for making our system work. This is topographic data, it is airspace data, it is existing traffic data, it is weather data. These suppliers will need to be integrated. We are not even pretending to be collecting these data ourselves. We will integrate certified or certifiable services into our system. And we're actually talking to providers of these services and discussing the APIs that we need to integrate their data. And you mentioned Lufthansa. We are actually even discussing integrating Lufthansa generated data into our system. Lufthansa provides very, very precise data around almost all international airports worldwide. Their data is available to us and will be integrated into our decision-making processes, et cetera, et cetera. So data provision by third parties plays a big role in our system, and we see that as a significant part of infrastructure.
Okay. I think from my side, I don't have any more detailed question now. So we hope that we also will see you at our eFlight Forum China, which we will plan at the beginning of December. And with this, I would say thank you to you, and we hope to hear you, and I'm sure we will hear from you soon about air taxi, urban air traffic management. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fertig. Los.
How can you get eFlight Journal? Just scan the QR code on this page. Or just type in your browser www.eflightjournal.com. Then you receive the page with the latest online news on electric flying, eVTOLs, and everything which is connected with electric mobility in the air. Or you can click the link on the top and then you go to the latest PDF version, which you either can read in the Yumpu reader directly on your screen, like a conventional magazine, or you can go and download the magazine as PDF file so that you can read it offline wherever you want. Thanks for watching and goodbye.